I'm Captain Kirk.
Fascinating.
I'm a doctor, not a mechanic.
Thank you, love you. Mwah.
Most illogical.
Aye, sir.
Well, that was different. Yep, lousy, but different.
Places, please, and here we go.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, bears, Tronians, and things, to episode 71 of the MuppeTrek podcast. I'm Steve.
And I'm Jarman, and we're here to compare, contrast, and confer about our two favorite franchises. And what are those, Steve?
Oh, the Muppets and Star Trek. We've been doing one-to-one reviews of the Muppet Show and Star Trek, the original series.
And tonight we're covering the Muppet Show with special guest stars, plural, that's right, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, and Star Trek original series episode, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. And before we move on to something, Steve, I just want to mention, I saw part of an art exhibit over the weekend, and there was this thing available. People were talking about it. It was buzzing because it was Statler and Waldorf made from like some kind of strange different materials and clay and like real hair and stuff. And I saw them, it looked amazing, and I'm like, oh man, I'm going to surprise Steve and get this for him because I'm making a little bit more money these days. And I can finally pay him back for all those wonderful gifts him and his wife have given me over the years. But I get there and it was $500. I'm like, nope, maybe next time.
Nah, dude. Human hair? That's I
didn't say it was human hair. It was like probably like cloth hair, but it looked
like
really
cat
cool.
Hair or something.
It was a really cool artistic rendering of Statler and Waldorf, and it just looks so cool. But nope, you're not getting it. Sorry.
Well, that sounds like a cool sentiment, but a creepy piece of art.
So why don't you tell us about the guest stars on the show this week, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans?
Well, Roy Rogers, he was known as the King of the Cowboys. Being an early star of the Western genre, he became a star of screen and radio, even had his own show, The Roy Rogers Show, for a while. Never far from his side was his horse Trigger, his dog Bullet, and his lovely wife, Dale Evans. Dale Evans, a singer and performer herself, predominantly for radio. Her and Roy met on set and fell in love. It was her fourth marriage and his third.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
They had a few children from prior marriages, but only had one child together, their daughter, Robin Elizabeth. She actually died at 2 years old from complications from Down syndrome. And Dale Evans wrote a book about it, Angel Unaware, I believe, that gained this huge following. And she became a figurehead in changing the public's perception when it came to children with mental disabilities.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
She became this sudden cultural icon for this. But what does our audience know them from? Unless you're into old Westerns or gospel television, likely not much.
Strangely, my connection was the Three Amigos does not have Happy Trails, Roy Rogers' song in there, but a song that's basically parodying that song. And I remember asking my parents about that song. They're like, oh, that's basically making fun of the Roy Rogers song, Happy Trails. And so I downloaded that song off Napster and I had it on my iPod for a long time. So yeah, that's my connection to Roy Rogers. That's about it.
But everyone's heard at least one of these songs. Some of them are truly American classics. And some of them we get to even listen to this week on this week's episode of the show.
That's right. Backstage
this week, to honor the guests, the entire show goes cowboy. Backstage, Roy Rogers has ordered cows for the closing number. Him and Kermit get to do a little bit of singing in the dressing room, and they talk about Roy's 189 films.
Yeah.
And how he has never played a villain. Fozzie can later be seen telling cow jokes to the cows, and they absolutely love it. On stage, Kermit comes out in cowboy attire and introduces the opening number. We're greeted by a desert prairie filled with gophers who pop up from their holes and collectively sing Blue Skies. It's adorable. Next, Roy Rogers hits the stage and sings about a horse named Skyball Paint, and we get a sweet taste of Roy Rogers' iconic yodeling. Following this, we get a wild world of Muppet sports where it's horseshoe throwing, but they forget to detach the horses from the shoes.
A good chuckle.
Hitting the stage after this is Dale Evans. She performs deep in the heart of Texas with a fiddler and Bobby Benson's baby band that Jarman thinks is really creepy. She changes the lyrics, making the babies howl like coyotes and neigh like horses.
Even worse.
In the UK spot, so something that American audience didn't get to see initially, is two cowboys riding cows, which they call hosses. And they sing a song called Four-Legged Friends, which is them making fun of the fact that their horses are cows. We get a bear on patrol. with Link as the sheriff and Fozzie as his deputy, and some no good is in town looking for Sheriff Link. The place gets shot up and the scoundrel makes his entrance. Link hides under his desk, but Fozzie tricks him into a holding cell. For once, Fozzie does something right.
I know. In that segment, he does it right.
Next, it's time for a horse race as cowboys line up until one of them hits himself on the post as this horse takes off without him. Finally, we get Roy and Dale on stage on the range around a campfire. They sing a medley of their best hits, including Hazy Mountain, El Rancho Grande, Tumbling Tumbleweeds, and finally Happy Trails. Kermit thanks Roy and Dale and asks Roy to do him a favor and sign off. And he does apparently his famous sign off, which was, "Until we meet again on the screen or in person, goodbye, good luck, and may the good Lord take a liking to you."
I hope the Lord doesn't hate you.
Is what we call the Muppet Show. So, Jarman, what did you think of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans on the Muppet Show?
Well, I was kind of traumatized early on by seeing Dale Evans and hearing her on screen just because she reminded me of all the old ladies I would see at church as a kid with the huge hair and way too much perfume.
She is every old lady from church.
And warbly singing voice. Yeah, like that was like yeah. Anyways, but Roy Rogers was also delightful, and she was also delightful. It's just that just kind of triggered me a little bit there with that. And both of them seemed to be perfectly at ease with the Muppets. Like they're just used to it somehow. Like it was just comfortable.
I think it's one of those situations where both of them have performed so many times with so many people in so many locations and done these exact same songs over and over. This is the exact performance they would have put on no matter who was on that stage with them.
Whether they're imaginary creatures or not.
Right. They're consummate professionals in that they would treat this exactly the same.
Yeah, they look completely at ease and comfortable. It was kind of interesting to watch that happen. And I like the fact that the whole episode was converted into a country western kind of thing, and they even called it like the Muppet Country Hour or something like that at the beginning. And the talk segment you didn't mention with Roy Rogers and Kermit. That was them backstage. I mentioned it, but you did. Okay,
yeah, but it wasn't quite an on the wall, but as close as we've gotten in a while.
Right, and I love that Kermit was like trying to learn how to sing from him, and then he starts yodeling, and he's like, you know what? I'll just be the villains because they don't sing. I'll be a black cat.
Sing. Yeah.
But those damn babies, I hate them. Every time they trot those babies out.
No, as soon as I saw them, I was like, oh, Jarman's not going to like this.
And I remember Jolie, my girlfriend, was watching it with me, and she was just like, what are those supposed to be babies? I'm like, yes, they're terrifying. I hate them. Make them go away.
The evil little potato demons.
Potato demons. That's absolutely right. That's what Russian people are afraid of. Potato demons.
Potato demons.
But I overall, I'm giving it a middling episode status because it's not bad at all, but it's not like something that stands out hugely to me. What about you?
I think when I think of the other episode that basically followed this exact same pattern was who is it? Rita Coolidge and Chris Christopherson.
Yes.
Followed this exact thing where we got like a performance just from him, a performance just from her, a performance together. Nice sign off. But I feel like this was done really well as opposed to that one because they had that overall theme you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Which made everything very strong and fit very well regardless. They're each huge stars in their own right. And so because of that, I think they utilized them well.
Right.
Even though they were a very niche act.
Yeah, they played up to that niche, whereas there's not really a niche for Rita Coolidge and Chris Christopherson. Right. Which is kind of cool, I guess. But
I feel like they've had other niche kind of performers that have not come out well.
Yes, true.
Like Edgar Bergen.
Ugh.
Who just ended up being one of our absolute least favorites because he had this shtick and they kind of like didn't do it or they did it too much as I remember it.
And I think it's disturbing to have like a different kind of puppet on the Muppet Show who just doesn't work. That was weird.
And it felt like this was sort of the polar opposite of Bob Hope, who he wasn't in enough of it. He wasn't utilized well for what he was in. He really seemed like he was almost not there. So to have these two other like absolute iconic legends do it right was like, oh, it can be done right.
Yeah.
Bob Hope, come on.
I mean, he's been in hundreds of films too at that point, but what the hell's wrong with him? He couldn't be comfortable around some Muppets.
Come on, Bob.
I feel like they have lots of grandkids they hang out with all the time. They seem like that kind of people, They just like love little toys and they like having fun with it.
All right. Well, the music this week on the Muppet Show is extra special. Blue Skies, written by Irving Berlin, and it was a last-minute addition to the musical Betsy. And the show didn't do that well, having only 40 performances, but the song became an instant hit. Deep in the heart of Texas, I couldn't find anything interesting about Skyball Paint, so we're just skipping it. It has yodeling in it.
Yeah, apparently.
Deep in the heart of Texas, lyrics by June Hershey and music by Don Swander. A lot of people believe it's the state song of Texas, but it isn't. That would be Texas, Our Texas.
Oh.
The UK spot, A Four-Legged Friend, is by Jack Brooks, actually a UK songwriter who came to Hollywood and wrote lyrics for many popular songs, including That's Amore.
Ah.
Same guy. There's a brief singing of Froggy Winnacorton. It's an English folk song that has that's on record as early as 1580.
Wow.
And finally, we get a 4-song sort of medley: Hazy Mountain, El Rancho Grande, Tumbling Tumbleweeds, and finally Happy Trails. This is sort of a best of for both Roy and Dale. Happy Trails being the most notable of all the songs, as this was the sign-off song for their radio show and later television show, the Roy Rogers Show.
That's why it was so popular.
Yep. So, Jordan, what did you think was the best Muppeteering moment this week?
I'm not sure about you, but I have to give it, even though there wasn't a lot of set necessarily, but the damn prairie dogs singing Blue Skies, because it was like Pop Goes the Weasel, but timed with the music, and they're dancing. There had to be at least 8 people on their stage because it was, or no, 4, because there was 8 hands or 8 puppets. There probably was more. I don't know, but that was nuts.
No, I agree. The coordination alone is something that we don't get to see in a lot of Muppet Show episodes. So it's extra impressive.
Yeah, that was nuts.
So agreed. Best Muppeteering moment, the Gophers. Absolutely.
Check it out online, folks, or on Disney+.
So, German, what happened on this week's episode of the original series?
So this week we have Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, and we have the Enterprise on its way to decontaminate a polluted planet named Arianus, or Arianus, they say it different ways. Yeah. But suddenly, they detect a rogue Federation shuttlecraft, and apparently whoever is on board is losing consciousness. So they tractor beam in that shuttle and find an alien in distress on it who passes out, and and it has black on one side of its face and white on the other side of its face. And then they have the Dr. Bones. He tries to investigate the alien and figure out what the hell it is. They've never seen it before. But he wakes up, and he's very belligerent and said he doesn't want to talk anymore, and he's being chased. And he didn't steal the shuttlecraft. He's just using it to get away from someone. And they're like, okay. But suddenly, an invisible craft is detected approaching the Enterprise. A tiny little scout ship, apparently, that they can't see physically. And that's because they had no budget 3rd season. That's why they did that. And it collides with the Enterprise and disintegrates. But before it can do that, the person on board is another half-white, half-black alien, beams himself onto the bridge. He says his name is Bele or Bell, or they pronounce it several different ways, as Stephen mentioned before.
Kirk calls it Beale at one point.
Beale. And this guy is now claiming the person they pulled on board earlier is named Lokai, and that he's a traitor that he's been searching for 50,000 years. So this guy is super old. He convinces Kirk to let him see Lokai in sickbay. But once they get there, they just argue about the history of their people. And Lokai says that Bele people enslaved his and oppressed them for thousands of years. And he's just a revolutionary. He's trying to get people to rise up against them. But Bele demands that Kirk take them straight to Charon, their home planet, so that Lokai can stand trial for his crimes of treason. But Kirk refuses because he says they don't have an agreement with their planet Charon because they're outside of the Federation. So and plus they're on a time-sensitive mission to Arianus, and billions of lives are at stake. So Bele uses some kind of superpowers to take control of the ship and take them to Charon. It's not really explained how he does that.
Unclear.
With his mind somehow. But Kirk can still talk to the computer. So Bele just sits there for some reason and lets Kirk and the rest of his crew slowly talk the computer through a very long process of self-destructing the ship. And with less than 10 seconds left before it blows up, Bele concedes and he hands control of the ship back over to Kirk. For some reason, Kirk doesn't then just put them both in the brig, and they are given free reign of the ship. Why not?
I could put you in the brig, but I'm not going to do that.
I'm not going to do that.
He literally says it out loud.
He does. I don't know why, but I'm not going to. He tells them that they will have to go to the nearest starbase first after they finish their mission at Arianus, and he'll let them plead their case with the Federation. It's then that we learn why Bele hates Lokai so much, is because Lokai's people, are black on one side and white on the other side, whereas his people, Bele's people, are the opposite, white on one side and black on the other side. So obviously Lokai is inferior to him and can never change his ways. He'll always be inferior and terrible. So obviously Spock tries to point out the ridiculousness of this, and but since Bele refuses to talk things through, Bele sabotages the ship, or as Kirk says in this episode famously, he sabotages the ship's computer so that it cannot be self-destructed anymore, and he takes control of it again, but only after the Enterprise has already saved the planet of Ariana. It's very considerate of him. So Bele brings the ship all the way back to their planet of Charon, and once they're there, they realize that they've been gone so long that the entire planet has already destroyed itself. There is not a single intelligent life form left on the planet. So at that point, Lokai makes a run for it to the transporter room. Bele chases after him in a very long, weird sequence. They run through the entire ship a long time, and they both beam down to the planet, never to be heard from again. And the people left on the ship, Kirk and Spock and all them, say, well, that's too bad. I hope they get along eventually. But apparently in the books, Bele and Lokai end up taking homes on the opposite poles of the planet, just avoiding each other entirely. And eventually, in a comic book, Bele randomly shows up on a mythical utopia planet that they thought didn't exist, and the Enterprise D finds it, Picard and all them, and he has no recollection of his life before arriving there, and the black and white sides of his face have switched for unknown reasons. So it seems like some serious shit went down on this planet of Charon since that time. But that's the only other things in all of Star Trek canon where these guys are ever mentioned again. But that's let that be your last battlefield. So, Steve, what'd you think of it?
So before we get into this, I just have a question for you.
Okay.
Is this widely considered one of the best episodes?
I don't think so. I think it's considered a very poignant episode because of the blatant point it was trying to make, but not necessarily one of the best Star Trek episodes. Okay. I just wanted to take, because I just want to know if I had picked right, because this is easily my favorite of season 3. Very nice. Very nice.
Easily my favorite of season 3. Well acted, well written, well executed, even for what essentially equates to a bottle episode.
Yeah, pretty much.
Super successful, great acting from the guests, which is not always the case.
Very true.
And Shatner's Kirk was on point.
Which is really Kirky
on point
acting sometimes, but yeah.
Well, he had to play a lot of weird positions and a lot of bluffs and that kind of stuff.
Right.
All right, so let's get to the real review. Things I liked. Bele, whatever the hell his name was. Seriously, listen to it, folks. They call him 5 different things for the episode. Was a great, and I hesitate to use the word villain, because really him and the other guy were collectively the antagonist.
Right.
But he is the one that took the villainous actions of taking over the ship and then playing his cards slow and then disabling the self-destruct so he could eventually get his way. He acted as the villain.
Right.
And he was great. One of the best we've had in all of Star Trek, and certainly season 3.
Absolutely.
I love the self-destruct thing where Kirk's like, fine, I'll blow it up.
I'll blow the whole damn thing away. I don't care.
Whatever. Was really good and very well played. And you could see the whole crew was ready to go along with it, which was actually impressive. And then you even mentioned it where he's the thing I found funny where he was like, I could send you to your quarter to the brig, but I'm not going to do that. Because I think that after seeing his power, Kirk doesn't want to press his luck.
That's smart. That's true.
It really seems like Kirk is giving them an out.
Yeah.
And then he pulls the ultimate political, or like the, ambassadorial card of like, you can spend time with my crew, or the best ambassador Starfleet could have. So yeah, I took that as like very clear writing, and maybe I'm giving Kirk / Shatner too much credit, but I thought that was great. And I think the third thing you said, the poignancy of the episode. Normally Star Trek has had these episodes where they try to make a philosophical point, and they just mess it up. Or like ultimately the analogy doesn't make sense, or it falls apart. And this time they really nailed it. The writers really nailed it.
Yeah. There's no getting around what they're trying to get at, pretty much.
Yeah. And the ending was such, I don't know, a good surprise. Like I didn't see that coming.
That they
I
just
should have. All the clues were there, which made it extra impressive. That they're like, we've been gone for 50,000 years. Like that should have been the clue. Like, oh no, their world's gone.
Yeah, nothing's going on there.
Some things I disliked or struggled with. Of all the things that Bones and Kirk and Spock have seen, all the weird stuff, they literally can't mentally reconcile a guy who's half black and half white. They're like, he is a one-of-a-kind freak. There could not possibly be another being like him that has ever existed or ever will exist.
We've seen a monster made of silicone rock, but no, this thing.
Right. They were just one of those things like, of everything they've seen, they're like, no, this is an absolute.
That was kind of odd.
I know it was to set up the fact this other guy was going to show up. Like, I get that that's what they were setting up, but it was too thick.
But they could have had like one or two lines like, oh, this is unusual. But staying, it was like, impossible.
All it'd be is, do we have any beings like this on our records? No, Captain. None that the Federation has encountered.
Fascinating.
Bam.
There you go.
Done. Ill-defined powers. You know, that's one of my bugaboos. They never really go into why this guy is just able to will the ship to do what he wants.
They've got force fields that apparently burn up things around them, maybe, kind of.
And smart enough to somehow get into a computer system and disable a self-destruct mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very unclear, and I am a little bit... Now, mind you, they did imply through the whole thing that they're very powerful.
Right.
Like, once they get to the, like, I've been chasing her for 50,000 years, you clearly know this is not just some dude. And
Bones even says when he's first inspecting the guy, he's like, this is his like body's working at top proficiency or something like that.
Yeah. So I don't know. And once they decontaminated the planet, because that was the whole subplot of this episode, was they've got to get to this planet to decontaminate it and save 1 billion people.
Right.
Once they did that, which happened about 2/3 of the way, or maybe halfway through the episode, it really deflated the sort of ticking time bomb aspect of this. And so I think that they could have saved it to the end and kept it a race against the clock.
That's true.
To resolve this thing, and it would have heightened the tension.
Yeah, more urgency throughout.
More urgency. But I think by putting it at like the half to 2/3 point, I was like, oh, okay. Glad they have time to resolve this now.
Because then they could have the guys could have transported themselves off to the planet Charon, and they would have been like, well, we want to stay and help them or investigate or get them, moderate them, but we can't. We got to go back to this planet real quick because they're going to die.
Yeah, and all it would take would be one line like, Kirk just, Mr. Spock, do we still have time to make it? If we hit maximum warp. Hit it, Spock.
That's absolutely true. Well, this was I have to say, this is a very unique episode for me. It's probably the first episode of Star Trek I may have ever seen was this episode.
Wow. Okay.
I watched it with my parents probably when I was around 12 years old. It was on some random TV station, and my mom knew of this episode, and she explained the symbolism to me because I must have been a pretty dense kid, and I get it, but she explained it to me. And when she did, I was like, oh, wow, because he's half white. Oh, it's talking about race. Oh, I get it. And that's when she also told me that she was able to see Gene Roddenberry at a talk back when she was in college, and I was like, oh, so my mom's like kind of likes Star Trek a little bit. But I didn't start really watching it till after college. So this episode has a huge nostalgia factor for me because I had that connection with my mom and being the first episode of Star Trek that really introduced me to Star Trek, which is crazy. And then I had, through the years, other podcasts I've heard, people kind of downplayed this episode a lot, but I have a huge nostalgia factor for this episode, so I have goggles on that let me see if it's really good or bad. The only thing I've recognized is that some of the scenes go on a long time when they don't need to. Like the whole self-destruct sequence is really drawn out and becomes kind of silly because why didn't he just stop them from saying the words that they were saying if he has all this power? Right. And then also like the running scene at the end where they're chasing after each other just goes on and on.
Okay. That scene had what must have been a script, and I know exactly what they did. Because how many times did you see running cameras in that era? Like ever. Never. Like much. The camera rigs were so big and heavy. Like you never saw shots like that. But if you look at the guys, they're kind of running like idiots.
They're
like,
running very strangely.
Yes. But if you look at a few of the shots, both of them, have a hand out reach and they're holding a rope.
Oh.
And the rope is obviously tied to the camera rig or maybe the cameraman. And it's to tell them their distance.
That makes sense.
Which is why they look like idiots, because they're not actually running at full speed because the camera couldn't possibly move that fast. The rig. So they're like holding this rope and drooping their arms.
They look so weird when they're running. Like, why are they running so strangely?
Well, the best part is that right before that, the guy who played Bailey, sprints. And I mean, really runs fast through one of the corridors. And I was like, man, I don't know if we've ever seen someone run that fast on Star Trek. And then the next shot is them doing that run at the camera thing. And I was like, oh, okay.
So I had to mention because of that, this will kind of transition into trivia, but that running sequence. So the two actors playing those parts, they collided with one another during that sequence because neither actor knew that the other was striding down the opposite ends of the corridor because the camera crew hadn't warned them that the scenes were being shot simultaneously because of time constraints. So they had both coming down opposite corridors, and they ran into each other because they were filming at the same time.
Yeah, rewatch the scenes. You will see they both have like one hand out in front, and on a few of the shots, you can see the rope. That
is too funny. But so overall, though, I had to give it high marks for season 3, especially. And overall, it was one of my top episodes. Back in the show called 10 Forward Podcast, they used to do a thing called Desert Island Trek, and you kind of take one episode from each of the Star Trek series. And this is one of the ones I picked from the original series. So I was just like, it's got that nostalgia factor. And I think it's a great message. It can still be used today, So
is that where you met Paul Wright and Daniel Peter Hitch?
I think so. Yeah, that's when I first heard of those guys. Yeah, and
is it
Sean
also where you met Sean Vanderloo?
That's right.
Bam, name drop, gentlemen.
Oh man! So some trivia for this episode. We already said one of them, but the original story concept did not depict the aliens with bicolored skin. One was a devil with a tail, and the other was an angel for some reason. But episode director Judd Taylor, thankfully, came up with the idea of the bicolored skin shortly before the episode began filming. His original suggestion was that they be half black, half white, one color from the waist up and the other from the waist down, which I don't know how they would have revealed that without having their clothes off. It's just really strange.
Right. It just would have been like tight shorts and tank tops I guess, all around.
The central idea stuck, but the colors were finally separated along the vertical axis rather than along the horizontal. And because of that, of course, they're both depicted wearing gloves the whole episode. And that was because you don't want to see them. They'd be smearing makeup over everything.
Their hands have been terrible to deal with.
And occasionally you can see the break in the sleeve and the gloves and the actors, and you see just the regular pink skin sticking out. It happens in the HD. The funny part, though, is you might have noticed a very weird, jarring thing they haven't done in any other episode, which was zooming in and out on the red alert light in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because they were doing that in honor and / making fun of Frank Gorshin, the guest star, because he plays the Riddler on the Batman TV series. Yeah. And so that's a thing they do a lot in that show is this quick zoom in and out thing. So that was only in this episode of Star Trek.
He's also the bad guy in Meteor Man.
Was he? Oh, yeah, that's right.
He plays like the old white guy.
I forgot about that. He did have some roles even farther down the line. But yeah, so that's our little trivia there. So we got any Trek Connection, Muppet Connections this time?
Oh, do we? Well, the song Blue Skies, featured in this week's Muppet Show, was also featured in Star Trek Nemesis and was sung by Data.
Oh, very nice.
Sherry Jackson, actress who played the role of Andrea in the original series episode, What Are Little Girls Made Of? There we go. She was also in a 1952 episode of the Roy Rogers Show called Unwilling Outlaw, where she played Lucy Collins. I don't know who that is, but. And then Bill Ketching played Antimatter Lazarus Being number 2 in the original series episode The Alternative Factor. Well, he played a henchman in 6 different Roy Rogers Show episodes.
Wow. They get around.
Matter Lazarus Being number 2.
All right. So similarities. These episodes were just the same damn thing, to be perfectly honest.
I had to get my eyes checked.
I mean,
I just watched the same thing twice?
Twice in a row. I mean, because both the cows and cowboys take over the whole show of the Muppet Show, just like the two Sharonians took over the Enterprise completely.
All right, both feature people being hunted or pursued. Loki is being pursued by Bele, And Sheriff Link Hogthrob is being pursued by the rough and villainous cowboy Bullets Barker.
Oh, I put a similar thing because Loki complains of Bele's people enslaving and oppressing his people, just as Link Hogthrob is oppressed and branded like a slave by the cowboys.
Okay.
Because that's Backstage Link Hogthrob.
Yeah, that's the Backstage plot. Wow.
Yeah.
Both feature people unable to get where they need to be going. The Enterprise getting redirected to Charon, and Slim Wilson getting stuck on a sign on like a post when he's trying to ride Skyball Paint.
Same episode, basically.
Same episode.
Oh, what's that noise?
Transporter malfunction. Transporter malfunction.
All right, here's the part of the show where we transport one character from one episode to the other and vice versa. So what you got for us, Steve?
This week, Treks to Muppets, I'm bringing over Loki and Beale to replace Link Hogthrob and Bullets Barker, with Loki hiding under a desk and Fozzie attempting to lure Beale into like a trap.
Very nice. Well, because I'm having Bele and Loki come over to replace Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. So they'd be trying to sing Happy Trails together and get into a terrible fight and chase each other all over the Muppet Show set.
And their force fields go off and it threatens to destroy the Muppet Theater.
All the felt just goes up in flames.
Muppets to Trek, I've got bringing over two of the cows to replace Loki and Bele. They inexplicably hate each other, but everyone on board doesn't understand because they're just both cows.
I love that. I watched that.
But they just hate each other.
So this is kind of cheating because Sam the Eagle wasn't in this episode, but I'd love for him to come over and replace Bele and for Floyd to replace Loki. Because it would basically be a super conservative tight ass chasing down a rebellious hippie, and I love that idea.
Interesting mention, Miss Piggy not really in this episode, which is extremely rare.
You're right,
extremely
not at all.
Rare.
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't realize.
Like she's in the pre-recorded intro stuff, but beyond that now.
Right, that's true. Huh? Good notice there. But I guess that brings us to the end of episode 71 of the MuppeTrek podcast, if I can say that.
Join us next time for the Muppet Show with special guest Lynn Redgrave.
An original series Star Trek episode, The Mark of Gideon.
So from the lovers, the dreamers, and us.
Live long and prosper, everyone. Thanks for listening to the MuppeTrek podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media on Facebook and Twitter.
Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform.
This podcast has been brought to you by A Play on Nerds.